Either the president is that aloof or you are irrelevant.
You were in the critical care unit. The acting Secretary of Defense was vacationing in Puerto Rico, and President Biden was unaware that you were not in the chain of command.
And she has all of the capabilities and situational awareness to do that.
Except the president wasn't aware.
What I told my assistant to do was call an ambulance, and that's all that I told him to do.
You see how the spider web could fracture and go in 1,000 different directions.
Will you call for the re-recruitment, restoration of full rank and back pay for the 8,600 service members who were vax mandated out of the military?
No, I won't.
We're in 3 wars. You went AWOL for 3 days, and we get 2 hours with you.
My teenage daughter knows to tell her supervisor if she's not going to work.
Thanks for putting up with the outrage and the drama.
I'm just trying to connect the dots. I'm seeming to not be able to connect those dots with you.
Are you kidding me?
Mr. Secretary, help us get this straight. At what point during your hospital stay did you or your staff decide that the president should know about your hospitalization?
As I understand it, my chief of staff contacted the National Security Advisor and advised him that I'd been hospitalized on the 4th of January.
At what point during your stay was the 4th of January?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
How long into your stay was that?
Well, as we've pointed out, as has been pointed out earlier, I was admitted to the hospital
after you were
on the 1st
hospitalized?
of January. Right.
Okay. Yes or no, did you tell your staff not to inform the president, anyone on your staff?
I never told anyone not to inform the president, the White House, or anyone else about my hospitalization.
Okay, so the 30-day review summary lays a lot of blame at the feet of your staff. It seems that would appear, correct? For the breakdown in the process? You've told us that you are responsible, but the 30-day review seems to blame your staff.
Well, the 30-day review pointed out that that there were some missteps, but there was never any ill intent or an intent to obfuscate. So,
1 year ago, you told me in this hearing room you had no regrets about what happened in Afghanistan. Do you regret what happened here?
I've said that we didn't get this right, Congressman, and we put measures in place to ensure that the notification process is improved going forward.
Mr. Secretary, who will be held accountable?
The transfer of authority was
Who will be held accountable for this? This embarrassment?
Again, I take full responsibility, and we put measures in place to address the shortcomings.
Are you surprised the president didn't call for your resignation? I'm surprised, but are you surprised that he didn't call for your resignation?
The president has expressed full faith and confidence in me.
So you're not surprised that he didn't call for your resignation. Is it typical that the president would go 3 days without talking to his Secretary of Defense? Is that typical, or is that a regular posture? Do you usually go days without talking to the commander?
I mean, that can happen. It depends on whether or not the president's on travel. If I'm on travel, there are times when we do go days without direct communication.
So the big issue for me here is either the president is that aloof or you are irrelevant. Which one is it, Mr. Secretary? That the president would go 3 days without knowing that his Secretary of Defense is not on the job?
It's neither. The president is not aloof, and I participate in all of the.
Let me ask you this: on January 2nd, while you were in the hospital, President Biden was vacationing in the Caribbean. Your deputy, who the president didn't even know had operational control, was on a beach in Puerto Rico. What kind of message does that send to our adversaries?
The key piece is that, number one, the deputy has the ability to, she has access to secure communications. She has the ability to participate in decision-making processes from wherever she is.
Mr. Secretary, our adversaries should fear us, and what you've done has embarrassed us. And let me sum this up by this. A leading Chinese propaganda outlet said that what happened to you exposed, quote, internal chaos. A leading Russian propaganda outlet said that your disappearance, quote, effectively compromised the
Gentleman's time's expired. Chair now recognizes the chair now recognizes the ranking member.
Was there any time during this process, in the first days of January, when you were in the hospital, any time whatsoever when the Deputy Secretary wasn't in a position to fully carry out the responsibilities of the Secretary of Defense, regardless of whether she was in Puerto Rico or Bermuda, Mexico or Mar-a-Lago or wherever, she was in a position to carry out all of the authorities that she had as the acting Secretary of Defense in that instance, correct?
She is legally and logistically positioned to assume the functions, and she was, you're right, in a position to be able to support the president as chief of staff, as he made decisions. So, commander in chief. So, she always has secure communications with her, just like me, and she has a situational awareness that's needed to be able to make effective recommendations to the president, and she, working with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and also the combatant commander, would propose options for the president in any situation.
You already moved to put into place a regulation that basically states that this now will be communicated in all instances to the President of the United States, so that the whatever confusion surrounding the lack of communication now has been now codified at the department to make sure it doesn't happen again. Isn't that correct?
That's correct, sir. And we had the opportunity to put those procedures in play when I went back to the hospital on February 11th, and it was there was timely notification in a seamless fashion.
So, Mr. Secretary, my question is, when did the National Military Command Center become aware of your hospitalization?
The chairman of the Joint Chiefs was notified on, as I understand it, on the 2nd of January, and so the entire staff would have been notified at that time.
Was the Military Command Center informed that the Deputy Secretary of Defense had authority transferred to her?
When the transition takes place, there's a message that goes out to all of the key stakeholders, and so yes. Yeah.
And when was that message sent out?
2nd of January.
Is it standard operating procedure for your security detail to notify in real time the National Military Command Center?
To my knowledge, my security detail does not notify the National Military Command Center of my work.
So it's not standard operating procedure for your security detail to notify the National Military Command Center?
That's right.
In a situation of somebody that you have control of that you didn't know, how would you have handled the situation?
If something like this happened to a subordinate of mine?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I would be concerned about that subordinate condition and welfare, and again, I would try to gain some understanding of what happened, and then I would ensure that we put measures in place that don't allow it to happen again, and that's exactly what we did here. And I would tell you that the president was foremost focused on my welfare, and then and ensuring that we had the right measures in place to streamline communications and to make sure that we were able to respond to anything in the future.
But you knew that you were going to take leave a week before the 22nd, correct?
That's right.
That's whenever you scheduled the surgery on for the 22nd, that would be when you knew. But she was not notified until the day of the procedure. Is that correct?
This was coordinated several days before, so I don't know the exact date when she was notified. But
okay, well, according to what we have, it appears that she wasn't notified. She was basically transferred the authority, but wasn't given the reason for the transfer of the authority. And I guess that's the thing I have the hardest time with is not the emergency procedure, but it is knowing a week in advance that you're going to be under anesthesia, out for 48 hours, give or take some time there, and why she wasn't notified at that time that she needed to be prepared to receive the authorities at that stage. My understanding is that she was in Puerto Rico, not in continental U.S. at that time. Is that correct?
That's not correct.
Okay.
22nd, she was in the States.
On the morning of January 4th, Mr. Secretary, you were in the critical care unit. The acting Secretary of Defense was vacationing in Puerto Rico, and President Biden was unaware that you were not in the chain of command. Now, as you know, I represent Fort Drum in the 10th Mountain Division, which you know well. Thank you for your service there in the North Country. But on this same date of January 4th, do you know how many 10th Mountain Division soldiers were deployed and are still deployed today in Iraq and Syria in support of Operation Inherent Resolve?
I know that they are deployed. I don't know what the number is.
It's just over 2,500. And on January 4th, at approximately 4 a.m. our time, the U.S. carried out a significant strike against a senior Iranian-backed leader in Iraq, correct?
That's correct.
And because President Biden did not know you were outside of the chain of command during this U.S. strike, if Iran or its proxies in Iraq or Syria had carried out a retaliatory strike against 10th Mountain Division soldiers, the president's chain of command would have and could have broken down, potentially delaying presidential orders to protect lives of American forces, constituents that I represent. Do you understand why this is unacceptable to the American people and to those military families?
Well, thanks. First of all, I would say that when we're attacked, we have the right to defend ourselves and respond immediately if it's a local attack. If a strike is warranted, then recommendations need to be provided to the president. Those recommendations come through from me, and after I've consulted with the chairman of the Joint Chiefs and also the combatant commander. The deputy secretary would have done the same thing, and she has all of the capabilities and situational awareness to do that.
Except the president wasn't aware. The president of the United States was not aware that you were not in the chain of command. So God forbid there was a retaliatory strike.
Yeah,
that would have caused potential delays, and it is unacceptable. Let me ask you this. What disciplinary action would a junior service member face if he or she failed to properly notify their chain of command and failed to report for duty?
If a service member was in a hospital, I think the chain of command would be concerned about why they were in a hospital and make sure that they're doing the right things to take care of them and their families.
But don't you think it's their responsibility to notify their commanding officer?
I think
the answer is yes.
Possible, yes. In my case, I would expect that my organization would do the right things to notify senior leaders if I am the patient in the hospital. Yeah.
It is unacceptable, and you have admitted as such that there was a breakdown in communication with the President of the United States, and I highlight the exact time, 4 a.m. January 4th, when you consider 10th Mountain Division soldiers and the potential for a retaliatory attack. That breakdown is unacceptable, and you said something very important. You said there was never a break in command and control. But yet the President of the United States was not aware that you were outside of the chain of the command. So is the President not a part of this command and control? Don't you believe that the Commander-in-Chief and the SecDef, that is critical for command and control?
He is clearly at the top of the chain in terms of command and control. But what's important is that we provide him with credible options and that he can pursue to address any situation. And it would have happened in this case because...
Except he was unaware. So what's important is the President was unaware of this breakdown in command and control, and you were not there in terms of who he would hear from.
Can you explain for the American people why standing up to Vladimir Putin and Russia alongside our European allies and funding Ukraine in their fight for democracy affects America's national security well beyond the borders of Ukraine itself?
Well, thanks. This really is about our security and the security of our allies and partners. And this really is about a rules-based international order. we don't want to live in a world where one country can redraw its neighbors' boundaries and illegitimately take over its sovereign territory.
It's been reported that when you returned to the hospital on January 1st, an aide told the dispatcher, "Can I ask that the ambulance not show up with lights and sirens? We're trying to remain subtle." Did you direct the aide to say that?
What I told my assistant to do was call an ambulance, and that's all that I told him to do.
Has anyone been disciplined for doing something that you did not tell them to do, namely actively suppressing information pertaining to your condition?
Again, as it pointed out in a 30-day review, there was a lot of things that happened, but there was no evidence of an intent to obfuscate or willingly conceal something. And so, at the end of the day, as I said earlier, I take full responsibility for this. We didn't get this right. We put the procedures in place to ensure that that this doesn't happen again.
Okay. Well, I respect that you take full responsibility. Let me ask you this, Secretary, and I'll finish with this. If a member of the armed services fails to report for duty and went missing for 4 days without informing their superior, they would likely face repercussions. Isn't that correct?
Hospital in the Washington, D.C. area
but I'm talking about somebody, one of your subordinates. If they did that, they would face repercussions and perhaps even be dismissed depending on the circumstances, correct? If they didn't report for 4 days.
Yeah.
Okay, and so I'll just finally ask, why shouldn't you face some discipline under these circumstances? You put yourself above the man?
I do not, and I have, as you know, I served 41 years in the military in uniform, and so I understand the challenges, and I understand that, leaders have to set the example. Again, I said that we didn't get the notification right. Again, I was the patient. And so I expect that my organization
Gentleman's time's
would be
expired.
the right thing to notify her.
In your opinion, what do you think should be the committee's top 2 or 3 priorities?
Well, you'll always hear me say that in terms of what we are focused on, China's our pace and challenge. Russia's an acute threat, and we really have to pay attention.
Gentleman's time's expired.
To my colleagues' points, this is the military. Good order and discipline and good communication is our baseline. It's the profound foundation that we build ourselves off of. And I know through your 40 years in the military, you've obviously had to relieve somebody of command. You've had to remove people from leadership positions. I think is that a fair statement? Yes, sir. And you've mentioned a few times that an individual that would be in your circumstances that are sick and put into and taken to the hospital. I've had that happen in the commands that I've served in. And what the leadership did at any given level, leadership would remove that individual from that leadership position. Number 1, for the well-being, but number 2, for the continuity of force, in case you need to be forward deployed, in case communication has to go by, with, and through you, sir. And you say the notification is the proper individuals were notified. And I understand that. But as I play this out in my head, if the president was to call you, which I'm assuming he called you directly on your phone, and you don't answer, and then he calls somebody in the Pentagon and say, "Hey, where's the secretary at?" And they say he's in the hospital. All right, then the bubble blows up. They're like, "Why is he in the hospital?" So you see how the spider web could fracture and go in 1,000 different directions. And my concern is that in your position, you're at the highest level, sir, but anywhere underneath you, you would have written these guidelines to take care of this problem set itself. But yet now we sit in this position where the problem lies on your shoulders. So when we talk about responsibility and accountability, this right here is setting a standard, sir.
Mr. Secretary, about how many Palestinian women and children have been killed by Israel since October 7th?
It's over 25,000.
Mr. Secretary, last week, the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights warned that any transfer of weapon or ammunition to Israel violates international law. About how many precision-guided munitions has the United States given Israel since the beginning of the war?
I don't have that number at my fingertips, but we have endeavored
Mr. Zaid, it's about 21,000 precision-guided munitions to Israel since the start of the war.
You said earlier the decision was made. The decision was made to transfer authorities again to the DepSec death. Again, did you make that decision to transfer authorities?
I did not. The decision was whether or not they had reached a threshold where I could not communicate or have access to secure communications, and so that triggers the
So your
process.
your condition was severe such that you could not personally action the transfer of authority.
The issue was, number one, they could not get to me, but number two, it was access to secure communications. It had nothing to do with my physical condition at the time.
And yet the decision was made. So who made the decision?
Well, as my assistants conferred, they agreed that we had reached that threshold and they should put the process in place, and they did, and I think it was the right decision.
So your military assistants made the decision to transfer authorities to the Deputy Secretary of Defense?
The military decision, the military aides made the decision to
without any
initiate the process, right?
In the chain of command.
Yeah, I mean, the law says that if I'm unable to...
Gentleman's time's expired.
So my questions to you, real briefly, is whether you could reflect on how our allies are perceiving this from a DoD's perspective, and whether you are concerned whether Russia might continue on in its war in the continent, and whether she is watching.
Our allies are troubled by the message that we're sending in a failure to support Ukraine, and certainly it has impacted the morale of the Ukrainian troops. It is if we continue down this path, it'll be a gift to Putin, and we certainly don't want that to happen. And then as others look at this, they will question whether or not we are a dependable ally or dependable partner, and that's very troubling for us as well.
You didn't tell the president that you had cancer, that you were being treated for cancer, or that the treatment for that cancer had gone wrong, because you saw it as personal and medical. And I think a lot of us have empathy for you in that regard. But now that you see how personal medical decisions are, will you call for the re-recruitment, restoration of full rank and back pay for the 8,600 service members who were vax mandated out of the military?
No, I won't.
So on March 4th, 2021, you authored a memo. It was entitled Message to the Force. And in that memo, you said that there would be clear and swift accountability for anyone who didn't meet the highest standards of the Department of Defense. Now, however this worked out, we all acknowledge that what you did here didn't meet the highest standards, right? You made a mistake.
I admitted to...
Yeah, okay, so we got that. So then the question is, what becomes the clear and swift accountability? Now, you're not going to be discharged, right? No?
That's right.
Okay, you're not going to be suspended. You're not going to be demoted, and you're not going to have your pay cut. None of those things are going to happen to you, right?
That's right.
Okay, so you come here seeking some grace and some forgiveness. And I want you to know that one of the service members who you vax mandated out of the military sent me the parable of the unforgiving debtor. And it's in the book of Matthew, it's verses 21 to 35. The man fell down before his king and begged him, "Please be patient with me, and I will pay all the debt." Then his master, filled with pity for him, released him and forgave him of his debt. But when the man left the king, he went to a fellow servant who owed him a few $1,000s. He grabbed him by the throat and demanded payment. His fellow servant sat down and begged him for a little more time. "Be patient with me, and I will pay it," he pleaded. But his creditor would not wait. He had the man arrested and put in prison until the debt could be paid in full. When some of the other servants saw this, they were very upset. They went to the king and told him everything that had happened. And the king called the man who had been forgiven and said, "You evil servant, I forgave you that tremendous debt because you pleaded with me. Shouldn't you have mercy on your fellow servant, just as I had mercy on you?" Then the angry king sent the man to prison to be tortured until he had paid his entire debt. Mr. Secretary, you come to us seeking forgiveness, but you offer none. And it seems as though the pattern is repeated. You make a mistake, like on the vax mandate and here regarding your notification, then you get busted. President Biden had to sign something into law reversing your vax mandate. You got busted here, not because you came forward, but because we learned of this through other means. And then after you get busted making a mistake, you want that benefit, but you don't want to extend it to others. This isn't swift or clear. You're not meeting your own standards that you set for yourself. And you say that the DoD is a learning organization. Haven't you learned yet that the military is weaker, not stronger, with the 8,600 people that you vax mandated out of the military?
Just one point, Congressman. The reason I'm here is because the chairman requested that I appear to talk about the circumstances surrounding my hospitalization.
But don't you see the hypocrisy in it? Because you screwed up, we fix your screw up, and now you want grace. But these people who sought religious exemptions, they got no such grace. And also, I just think it's ridiculous that we're in 3 wars. You went AWOL for 3 days, and we get 2 hours with you. If you can't spend more than 2 hours answering these questions, I don't know how you really operate in all these wars.
How long does it take? I mean, we could go through a number of scenarios. How long does it take a hypersonic missile as a first strike weapon to hit the United States? 15, 30 minutes, max?
Well,
ICBM, I mean, it's commonly out there. ICBM from North Korea, 30 minutes, make a decision.
So we've been clear that the notification was not adequate, but the transfer of authorities.
Right.
When is it?
But the President of the United States, as the Commander-in-Chief, doesn't know for 3 days his Secretary of Defense is incapacitated and in critical care. Correct?
In critical care, not incapacitated.
And
correct.
The President of the United States doesn't know that his Secretary of Defense can't access secure comms, correct? He doesn't know.
But the deputy is fully empowered and has full access to everything she needs.
Mr. Secretary, who made the decision, just in the time I have remaining, who made the, so your report says the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs was informed of the transfer of authority. Who made the decision for that individual to not inform the American people?
I can't answer that. Again,
did he make that decision?
Did I make that decision?
No. Did the Assistant Secretary for Public Affairs make the decision?
I can't.
You just had a 30-day review. You don't know who made the decision to not tell the American people?
I know that he was aware on the 2nd. I don't know what decision-making processes that.
To inform the public, you don't know today. You don't know who made the decision to not inform the public.
I'm not sure that there was a decision to not inform the public. I know that he had the information.
Mr. Secretary, in the time I have remaining, the Commandant of the Marine Corps had a medical incident and informed the American people and you. And here's what's missing here. This is not about process. You made this about process. This is about judgment and poor judgment. My teenage daughter knows to tell her supervisor if she's not going to work. The American people, truck drivers, bartenders, know they have to tell their boss or they get fired. But you've held yourself to a different standard, and that's unacceptable, Mr.
Gentleman's time has expired.
Thanks for putting up with the outrage and the drama. I would just say, look, you made a mistake. You admitted it. You're taking steps to address it. And you want to know what accountability is. Accountability is having to come and sit in front of people and their outrage and their drama in public about your health issues and the mistakes you've admitted you've made when the entire world is wondering what the hell is going on with the United States of America. So if we want to talk about what's going on in national security and the greatest threat to national security, it's not that the Secretary of Defense screwed up and is cleaning up the mess. The greatest threat to national security is the polarization of the country and the fact that we can't explain to the world who we are and what kind of leadership role we want.
So what error did you make, if any?
Well, first of all, I said that I didn't inform the president initially of my cancer diagnosis, and that was a mistake. In terms of the hospitalization, January 1st throughout, again, I was the patient. And so my expectation is that the organization inform the right agencies.
Okay, so maybe I didn't understood it. So as long as you inform somebody other than your boss to let the boss know, that is acceptable.
Certainly informing the chief of staff, the White House, the National Security Advisor, I think they would immediately inform the president.
So yes, so it really wasn't your fault, it was the staff's fault. So you informed the staff made an error. not to inform the president? I'm just trying to connect the dots.
No.
No, okay.
The president, my chief of staff informed the National Security Advisor on the 4th of January, and then that notification followed through to the president.
So in your opinion, you didn't make an error. It was the process that was the issue.
We didn't get this right. Again,
okay. I'm just trying to find where the blame lays.
Critical care at from the 2nd to the 4th.
Okay, so it wasn't your fault. It was the staff's fault.
Well, I didn't have access to any kind of communications during that time.
You didn't have a phone, nothing.
No.
Okay, that's interesting. Maybe we should reform the processes at the hospital to allow phones in there. But okay. My question is, because it doesn't seem like we're taking a lot of accountability, which I thought I heard at the beginning, so my apologies to the American people for that. When you were a commander, would you accept the same behavior from your subordinates as you did? So let me play it out to this. You had an enlisted man, a soldier, person. They went in for treatment, and they didn't tell you, the commander. They told their, friend. That's cool, right? That's good. We can follow. That's good. You'd accept that. And there'd be no punishment. There'd be no ramifications from that person, correct?
Well, I don't know which part you're referring to.
I'm making a scenario. Your boss is the President of the United States. No different than an enlisted person. If you're the commander, you're in charge, you're that person, you're the enlisted person's boss. If the enlisted soldier did the exact same thing as you did, you'd accept, well, it's really not the enlisted person's fault. It's really their staff's fault. And really, it's not even their staff's fault, it's really the process fault. No, I think that there would be some level of ramification, consequence, or punishment. I'm seeming to not be able to connect those dots with you. It's just different.
Chair not recognized.
Can you speak in a little more detail about the practical impact that our broken appropriations process has on the implementation of our national defense security strategy?
Again, you've heard me say a number of times that you lose both time and money. And if we go for a full year with the CR, that'll be... We'll lose about $25 billion in discretionary funds there. So this is a big deal because we go through a lot of effort to link our budget requests to our strategy. I think we've done a very good job of that, and of course, without a budget, we can't execute the strategy in its fullest, and so that's a concern. And again, as you look at the challenges around the world, our ability to do the right things to make sure that we maintain the edge in the Indo-Pacific, to help Ukraine counter Russia's aggression, and to do the things in the Middle East that we're doing to support Israel and to try to work to prevent the spread of a larger conflict. And again, we are supporting and doing a lot of things around the globe in support of our strategy, and without the funding, this doesn't. It hampers us. It hamstrings us.
Would you describe the withdrawal from Afghanistan as closer to a success or closer to a failure?
I would say that I'm proud of the work that our troops did in a very challenging situation, and proud of the support that we provided to Afghans who wanted to exit the country, and we were not able to support all the folks that we wanted to support, but that effort continues as we speak today.
So let me ask you that question again because it didn't get answered. Would you describe it closer to a success or a failure?
I think, again, it was a very challenging situation. I think we were successful in getting in retrograding our people and our equipment under in a very challenging situation, and we're able to help a number of Afghans as well.
In the 18 months prior to this administration coming to office in January of 2021, how many American lives did we lose in Afghanistan?
I'm sorry?
Prior to Joe Biden becoming president, in the prior 18 months, how many Americans did we lose in Afghanistan? How many military service members?
Very few. I'd have to go back and check the record.
I think it's exactly 0. And then we lost 13 lives under this administration's watch. 5,000 prisoners broke out of Bagram. We left billions of dollars worth of equipment. The Afghan army disintegrated within 2 weeks. And General McKenzie, General Milley, and I believe yourself as well, when we had a discussion in 2021, could not guarantee me or the American people that any of those 5,000 scumbags that did escape from Bagram weren't involved in the murder of the 13 service members that occurred under your watch.
3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, if Ukraine falls to Putin, what is in that future for all of us?
Well, thank you, and thank you for your support of the supplemental. If Ukraine falls, again, Putin won't stop there. He will just continue to move forward and attack and take on the sovereign territory of his neighbors. And so, if you're a Baltic state, you're really worried about whether or not you're next. And so they know Putin. They know that what he's capable of. And quite frankly, if Ukraine falls, I really believe that NATO will be in a fight with Russia.
Gentlelady's time has expired.
The date of the first surgery was December 22nd. At what point did you tell your staff you were going under the knife, going to be unconscious and incapacitated?
Again,
Did you tell your staff that you were in the hospital and going to be under the knife?
I have admitted that I didn't get this right. I should have notified the president of my cancer diagnosis and my.
So you didn't inform your staff in December when you had the December surgery that you were going to be incapacitated at all?
I knew I was going to be incapacitated, and I transferred authorities to the deputy secretary.
And then they had this emergency event. Well, that was January 1?
That's correct.
What time of day did that happen?
Late afternoon.
And then did you tell your staff late afternoon when it happened what was happening?
I didn't. My concern there was getting to the hospital.
You did not tell your staff that you were on the way to the hospital?
That's right.
Okay. When did your staff find out you were at the hospital?
I don't know when.
You don't know when you told your staff that you were at the hospital? Are you kidding me? Again, as a patient in the hospital undergoing evaluation. Okay, let me just back up. I have a minute and a half. If any American worker did what you did, they would be fired. And they aren't the number 2 in the chain of command of the greatest and most lethal fighting force in the world. And here you are. You're not informing anybody on your staff that this is happening, let alone the President of the United States, let alone the delay to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, let alone the delay to the Deputy Secretary. What happens? Now, I didn't serve. Most of my family has served. So can you please tell me in just a few seconds, when a soldier goes AWOL, when they wear the uniform, when they put their lives on the line for our nation, for you, what happens when they go AWOL? What is the punishment?
Well, I wouldn't equate my going to the hospital and receiving treatment
being
as going
incapacitated as a secretary here, yes, is going AWOL. So you don't equate disappearing, being incapacitated with being AWOL.
I didn't disappear. I was in a military
you didn't tell your staff.
facility in Washington, D.C.
You just testified you didn't tell your staff. Did you not? You just testified. What happens when a soldier goes AWOL? I have 20 seconds. What happens when a soldier goes AWOL?
We have to realize that, I have a fairly large...
Are they honorably or dishonorably discharged? Are they put into the brig? Are they? What happens? Seriously, you're not even answering the questions. I'm not going to rest until someone, we should not rest, until someone is held accountable. I am deeply disappointed in your response today. Thank you, and I yield back.
That we are adjourned.